This undock command will result in a physical separation on the official undocking time, which is scheduled for approximately 10:05 a.m. Central, 11:05 a.m. Eastern, which is in just about or just under 5 minutes from now. SpaceX will send the command to undock, and then the umbilicals will retract, and 2 sets of latches will open. There are a total of 12 sets of latches in 2 groups of 6. We'll get confirmation of that milestone from our Visiting Vehicle Officer, or VVO. The Dragon spacecraft is ready to return to Earth by making another delivery. It's returning some science experiments and hardware back to researchers on the ground. We are talking about a cargo spacecraft today, so there are no people on board the Dragon spacecraft that's getting ready to depart the space station. This spacecraft is also known as a cargo vehicle, as I mentioned, and it paid a visit to the station and is now leaving, hence the name Visiting Vehicle Officer. The VVO is one of the positions here in Mission Control that is monitoring today's undocking. Aboard the space station, NASA astronaut Nick Hague will also monitor the departure of the Dragon spacecraft from the International Space Station and act as an additional person in the loop from the space station's cupola. The cupola is a room aboard the space station that has plenty of windows and a workstation with data screens.
Station Houston on space to ground 2. First set of hooks open. Dragon is committed to undock.
Perfect. You heard that right there. The first set of hooks are open. That means that Dragon is ready to undock. There's no going back from here. So let's go back to talking a little bit about the cupola, where NASA astronaut Nick Hague will monitor the departure of the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft. So as I mentioned, the cupola is a room aboard the space station that has plenty of windows and a workstation with data screens. There is a good view of the Dragon spacecraft, and NASA astronaut Nick Hague is acting as a second set of eyes for mission control today. This is especially helpful when the space station is in an orbital nighttime during an undocking. If we cannot get the best views of the spacecraft here in mission control, NASA astronaut Nick Hague aboard station will have a much better vantage point, and if needed, will be able to visually confirm that the spacecraft has separated from the International Space Station. After physical separation, NASA astronaut Nick Hague will also monitor to make sure that the Dragon is behaving as it should while it's still near the space station. He also serves as a contingency in the unlikely event in a loss of control of cargo Dragon.
Station Houston, space to ground 2 for Dragon.
Perfect. We have just confirmed that the second set of hooks are open, so now all 12 hooks have opened, and the first burn is underway for undock burn 1. Undock burn 1 is a short undock burn, which lasts about a second and a half.
All the partners and all the investigators who brought us amazing science and a lot of good treats. So thank you very much, and Godspeed to Jack Toland and the team from SpaceX to bring your science home. Good luck, honey.
had Houston Mission Control, particularly from our daily summary, with these Dragon undocks. You can't help but wondering whether it is to be or not to be. That is the question. And today it was to be.
And you just heard good words from the commander aboard space station right now, NASA astronaut Sunny Williams, as well as NASA astronaut Don Pettit, who wished the departing vehicle goodbye as science returns back to Earth. We have received confirmation of the umbilical retract. The two sets of hooks that have opened, 2 sets of 6 hooks, a total of 12 hooks have opened. The first undock burn, which is a short burn lasting a minute and a half, or a minute, 1.5 seconds, that gets us slowly away from the space station, and then a second undock burn that took place, undock burn 2, which lasted about 5 seconds to continue to separate the Dragon spacecraft from the International Space Station. So Dragon used it's a combination of its 12 Draco engines around the base of the spacecraft and broke up any stiction between the Dragon cargo vehicle and the docking port. These 2 burns.
With you, Don, on 2.
These 2 burns will help the spacecraft slowly start backing away from the International Space Station.
A couple of cameras set up in node 2, one with an over-the-shoulder view and one with a view zoomed in to the AGA display. And the vent holes are unobstructed, and the inlet on the back is unobstructed.
Once again, the SpaceX's 31st commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station undocked this morning at 10:05 a.m. Central, 11:05 a.m. Eastern, as the space station was flying 260 statute miles above the Pacific Ocean.
Don, the view looks great.
The Dragon spacecraft.
I just want to make sure I understand the mode. I haven't turned anything on yet. I'm going to turn the palm on and let it get warm. I'm going to have the CSA-CP carbon dioxide on, and then when I get all of those guys running, then I will power on the AGA, and I've got some of the NH3 towelettes ready to go.
Copy all. That is the plan. You've got a good understanding, Don, and we will just take serial numbers per your procedure when you're ready.
Okay, AGA serial number 1010, and the palm is serial number 1002. And the CSA CO2 is serial number 1022.
Copy all. Thanks, Don.
And I'm starting up the CO2 monitor and the palm.
Copy. We're following.
And you are looking at views live from the Dragon spacecraft of the International Space Station. The full space station is coming into your view as we speak, and The space station is traveling at about 17,500 miles an hour, and as I mentioned, the undock took place this morning at 10:05 a.m. Central, 11:05 a.m. Eastern, and we are just a few seconds away from the next burn. And we received confirmation of a great depart burn 1 as Dragon continues to back away from the space station. This departure burn lasted about 22 seconds.
I'm getting a low battery alarm on, or a low battery light on the palm. I'm going to go put in some new batteries.
Copy all, Don. Additionally, for Dragon, departure burn 1 is complete.
Perfect, and you heard that here from our flight director. The burn is complete. It went really well. As I mentioned, we received confirmation of separation of the cargo Dragon carrying science and hardware home at 10:05 a.m. Central, 11:05 a.m. Eastern, as the International Space Station and Dragon were flying approximately 260 statute miles over the Pacific. The team will continue to monitor the departure of Dragon as it exits the approach ellipsoid. So we have two physical boundaries around the space station. You can't see them since nothing is physically there to mark them, but it's like a property line of your house. The first is called the keep out sphere, and then farther out we have the approach ellipsoid, or the neighborhood of the space station. Here's a good visual representation here on your screen. These are the safety boundaries used in the unlikely event that something goes wrong with the Dragon spacecraft after it undocked.
Station Houston, on 2 for Dragon. Dragon has exited the keep out sphere.
And we just heard that call out. Dragon has exited the keep out sphere. Good news as we continue to monitor the undocking of SpaceX's 31st commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station. You're looking at live views of cargo Dragon from the International Space Station on its screen as it continues, or begins rather, its departure to splash down off the coast of Florida. So you can see there some of the burns coming through of the Dragon cargo spacecraft, but let's continue to talk a little bit about the safety zones around the space station that require a set of go and no-go poles with different control teams. The first zone I mentioned is called the keep out sphere. It's a zone that consists of an imaginary sphere around the space station with a radius of about 200 meters. The second zone is called the approach ellipsoid. It's an imaginary shape measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, essentially a large 3-dimensional oval. Like I shared earlier, it's another chance to confirm all of the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Dragon before it moves away from the space station. And if you are just joining us right now, this is Mission Control Houston here at NASA's Johnson Space Center as we are coming to you live in the International Space Station's flight control room here. We're continuing our coverage for the undocking operations of SpaceX's 31st commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station. You are looking at live views of the Dragon spacecraft from the International Space Station as it continues to depart the various boundaries that surround the space station. Once Dragon exits the approach ellipsoid, we will be out of joint operations, and the SpaceX Mission Control Team in Hawthorne will continue to monitor the rest of Dragon's autonomous flight through splashdown. Splashdown is scheduled for December 17th at approximately 12:39 a.m. Central, 1:39 a.m. Eastern off the coast of Florida. Meanwhile, Mission Control will continue to monitor the International Space Station operations. And if you are just joining us, we are looking at live views of Mission Control Houston in the International Space Station's flight control room. The Dragon spacecraft is about 480 meters away from the International Space Station. In this short amount of time, the Dragon spacecraft has already moved through 3 burns. It completed the series of 2 undock burns, resulting in a physical separation of the spacecraft at 10:05 a.m. Central, 11:05 a.m. Eastern, and has already completed the first 2 of its departure burns. This is the 31st time that a cargo Dragon has undocked from the International Space Station. The SpaceX Dragon spacecraft supplies cargo to the space station under NASA's Commercial Resupply Services 2 contract. The flight control teams continue to monitor the departure of Dragon as it gets closer to exiting the approach ellipsoid. You are looking at live views of the Dragon spacecraft from the International Space Station.
Salve, gente! Desacoplamento da cápsula Cargo Dragon. Cargo Dragon CRS-31. Voltando para o planeta Terra. Desacoplamento da estação espacial. Olá, bem longe lá já. Bem longe. Comecei a live atrasado. Comecei a live bem atrasado, gente. A live começou atrasado. Sem querer, gente. Começou a live atrasado. A live. Olá, cápsula. Essa é a imagem da estação espacial, se não me engano. Estação Espacial Internacional, ISS. Em inglês. Imagens da estação espacial.
spacecraft successfully undocked this morning at 10:05 a.m. Central, 11:05 a.m. Eastern, as the space station was flying off the North Pacific coast of North America. Almost immediately, the first set of 2 hooks opened, and the second set of 2 hooks were opened after that. Dragon completed its 2 undocking burns. They were short ones, just about 1.5 seconds and 5
Hoje tem
seconds.
lançamento do
Ready?
Falcon
I'm
9.
ready to begin in step
Ai,
2.3.
deixa eu ver. Aqui no celular.
Almost immediately,
Ainda não foi
those
divulgado
burns both performed
a data
nominally,
do
and Cargo
lançamento
Dragon also
da Blue
went on to
Origin.
complete a 16-second departure burn and a second
Mas a
departure
Blue
burn that
Origin
lasted
tá
about
aqui, tá aqui
22
ainda.
seconds.
Como esse mês de dezembro, mas não
That second
sabemos se
departure
vai
burn
ser.
helped bring the spacecraft
Se
through the
esse
space
mês,
station into the atmosphere, the
pode
first
ser que
safety
seja
boundary
adiado para
around
ano
the
que vem.
International Space Station.
Esse mês tem quantos lançamentos que ainda não foi divulgado?
So as I mentioned, the next milestones
Tem
that we are looking
uma
at,
da
which is
Falcon
coming up in
9.
just a few minutes here, is the
Falcon
approach
9.
ellipsoid exit. The approach ellipsoid is the farther of the 2
Uma
safety
da
boundaries
Roxy
surrounding
Lab,
the International Space
outro
Station.
da Blue Origin, uma da Easy
The spacecraft is expected to fly
para
outside
esse
this
ano,
marker
esses anos.
in
Não
just
foi
about 2
divulgado.
minutes from now.
Outro do Falcon 9, outro da Rocket Lab, outro da Rocket Lab também, outro da ABLSS, outro da ISGO, e só, tem uns 12.
So we're just, the
No,
Dragon cargo
6.
spacecraft is about 800
6.
meters and
Não,
counting
7,
away
7,
from the space
7,
station.
7 eu acho.
We undocked about
7.
17 and a half minutes ago.
Ah,
And like
não,
I
sim.
said, we're just coming up in a few
Mas tem
minutes
bastante que ainda não foi
in
divulgado.
our boundary exit.
Mas eu acho que vai dar tempo. Até final do ano eu acho que vai
And
dar
if you're just
tempo.
joining us live, you're watching live coverage of the 31st SpaceX
dá
Cargo
tempo
Dragon
aí,
spacecraft
já
departing the International Space Station.
E não deu tempo, e não
It
deu
delivered
tempo.
cargo to the folks living and working aboard the International Space Station, and it stayed docked for just over a month, and it undocked from the port just under 20 minutes ago at 10:05 a.m. Central, 11:05 a.m.
A
Eastern.
live foi bem corrido, que eu já tinha visto que tava quase na hora e já tava programando live. Aí depois que eu programei a live, aí eu já coloquei aqui no OBS para colocar essa imagem primeiro, depois transmitir. Foi bem corrido. Interromper transmissão.
So that little white dot in the center
Se
of your screen that
interromper, a
you see
live
right
acaba.
now is of the
Mas
Cargo
ainda
Dragon
bem que deu
spacecraft as it continues to exit the second boundary or safety boundary surrounding the International Space Station. It is a oval or egg-shaped boundary, and that boundary is called the approach ellipsoid.
Imagens da NASA, gente.
They're getting
Novamente,
closer
essas são
views
imagens
of
da
the
NASA que
Dragon
estão
cargo
sendo
spacecraft.
transmitidas
It's a
no
little
meu
bit
canal.
bright with the sun shining on it, so you're getting a
Imagens
sun
lá
glare,
do
but
site
it
da
continues to
NASA.
depart the International Space Station.
Eu vou colocar na
Video of the
descrição para quem
displays as
quiser
well,
ver.
so you can see that all the displays and everything per procedure are as expected.
Ano que vem que vai ser onde que vou voltar os astronautas da Skyliner. Da
Copy all, Don.
Bond.
We're checking it out.
Ou será que não é? Olha lá, gente,
And
algumas
we just confirmed
placas solares aqui em cima de mim.
And Don, we're gonna
Dragon is now
solares
over
tem na
1,000
estação
meters away
espacial.
from the International Space Station. The spacecraft has exited the approach ellipsoid.
Entre as pessoas na Lua, todos pensavam que era Elon Musk, mas um estudo confirmou sua verdadeira origem.
We've been looking at the weather with a go after watching it all weekend, and we also received a go from Mission Control in Hawthorne and Mission Control in Houston here in the International Space Station control room to proceed for an undocking this morning. The undock command was sent, and the umbilicals were retracted, bringing the spacecraft to the internal battery tower. Then the first two sets of hooks were released. The first set opened nominally, committing...
Só diminui pouquinho aqui, gente. Diminuir pouquinho. Deixa eu pesquisar aqui, gente, se é esse que é do Starliner. Não sei. Não, esse não é da Starliner, é do Dragon. Esse é da Dragon. Deixa eu ver. Que dia que vão voltar os astronautas da Starliner. Mano, tenho quase certeza que não, que dia que vai voltar os astronautas da Starliner. Não deve acontecer.
Pelo amor de Deus, o que está acontecendo no Free Fire?
O retorno progresso acontecerá em fevereiro. Até lá, a nave Dragon ficará acoplada à ISS, a demora para o retorno dos astronautas. Vai voltar só em fevereiro, gente. Então, falta 2 meses. Falta 2 meses, tirando esse mês, que é dezembro. Só os... E a cápsula tá indo embora, não era pra ficar? Eu acho que vou trazer a cápsula de volta e vou... Acho que vou soltar um foguete para trazer um negócio de volta. Mas o problema é... E se os caras não estiverem vivos? Os astronautas não estiverem vivos? Eles estão na estação espacial. Mas quem sabe se eles não voltar, se eles não voltar vivos, hein? Eita, já estão, não. Fevereiro, dia 12 de fevereiro. E acabaram já a live, gente. Uma live bem curta, mas à noite. Mas à noite, gente, vamos se ver no lançamento do Falcon 9 às 21h51. Então essa foi a live de hoje. Espero que você tenha gostado. Falou, gente!